It's time for episode 77 of The Crisis Show here on Google Hangouts and on YouTube and from wherever else you have this link around the world. Good afternoon from upstate New York. My name is Rich Klein. I'm president of Rich Klein Crisis Management and founder and host of The Crisis Show. In this abbreviated episode, I'm going to talk about a post that I wrote on LinkedIn just a few weeks ago. It's called 5 Reasons Leaders Fail at Crisis Management. And it got a lot of play on LinkedIn and beyond. So I want to go over some of these tips for you about why I think in my many years of experience that leaders still fail, despite many case studies. They still fail to prepare for the worst, to respond appropriately in the middle of a crisis, and to rebuild their reputation properly once the crisis begins to subside. So let me go over these one by one, and I'm not going to take them verbatim. I want to give you some highlights, and I may elaborate on some of these points. And you can see below here the link to the article on LinkedIn. Uh, number one, the number one reason why I believe that leaders fail at crisis management is their failure to plan. And I preach about these 3 key timelines in a crisis often, before, during, and after. And I believe that the preliminary phase, this before stuff happens phase, as I call it, is the one area where leaders and middle management fail to take into account when facing a crisis situation. Because once the crisis hits folks, it's much harder if you haven't been prepared with media training and messaging and tabletop exercises and so forth. So really important long before a crisis hits to get your ducks in a row, to do your planning. And then when a crisis hits, you'll be much more prepared to move through it more smoothly as a company and protect your reputation. So number two, uh, the number two reason why I believe leaders fail at crisis management is the mentality that it won't happen to us. Folks, no company or organization is immune to crisis situations, and they run the gamut from slow burning, uh, minimal crises to the most serious kinds of crisis situations, such as workplace violence, product recalls, a data breach, severe weather, government investigations, high profile lawsuits, and of course, negative news stories about your organization that can really drive down your positive Google search results. So that's really important to remember that something is going to happen to your company at some point in its lifetime, and you need to be prepared for all levels of crisis situations. Now remember, depending what industry you're in, there are crisis situations that are particular to your industry and or your business. So those are the kinds of things you need to think about long in advance. The third reason I believe that leaders fail at crisis management is ignoring the media. And today that means social media as well. Saying no comment is simply not a viable option today, regardless of your attorney's advice. Uh, there are many ways to protect yourself against legal liability without saying those deadly words, no comment. So what you can do instead is in advance, again, it goes back to preparing for the worst, you can create carefully constructed messages that give reporters and the social media world, vis-a-vis your public, your critical audiences, it gives them enough information without wading into the hot waters of legal liability. But whatever you do, avoid those 2 words, no comment. If you can't talk about something, of course, you can tell a reporter, we can't talk about this right now, but we can tell you this. Well, we'll tell you at a later date. Those are just some examples of getting the media, giving them what they want, but also not getting yourself into any trouble. But if you say no comment, you're going to look guilty, or the public is going to think you're hiding something. So avoid those words. The fourth reason why I believe leaders fail at crisis management is not engaging in social media effectively in a crisis situation. And we see this over and over again. In my work researching stories on the Crisis Show, we look very closely at this issue. And from Fortune 50 companies right down to small businesses, we see mistake after mistake after mistake in the use or non-use of social media in a crisis situation. Uh, Leaders who use social media to show the face of a company in good times and to interact with customers on a regular basis are going to be in a much stronger position reputation wise when a crisis does hit. So keep that in mind. Get active in social media long before there's a crisis situation. And you have to communicate where your critical audiences will be looking for your brand or your organization. So that may be on Twitter, it may be on Facebook, maybe on Instagram or Pinterest or Vine or YouTube, LinkedIn, or all of the above. Only you can know where your audiences go. And if you don't know, this is a time to think about where customers are finding you, how they're coming into your business or your organization. You should know what social media channels they're on, and that's where you should be. And set those social media channels up for your company or your brand or organization long before a crisis hits. If they're set up, it's a lot easier to post information that people will want to know in a crisis situation. The fifth reason that I believe leaders fail at crisis management is forgetting the human aspect of tragedies. In the most serious crisis situations, every action and message has to lead with the safety and well-being of people. That is your employees, customers, injured bystanders, for example, and anyone who touches your company in a situation where people may have been hurt, or they may be threatened, or they may be sick, whatever the case may be, the safety and well-being of your critical audiences are most important. And so whether you're speaking at a podium at a news conference or posting a statement from your CEO on social media and issuing a press release, whatever way you get that message out, it has to, first of all, before anything else, particularly in the most serious crisis situations, you have to think about people long before you think about business continuity or anything else. Very important. Unfortunately, this is often overlooked, and I've analyzed hundreds of emergency management news conferences, and I've seen all too often where people go through the facts, and then at the very end they'll say, "Oh, by the way, we're sorry that 4 people were killed or injured." Always want to lead with that information at the very top, and the really good public information officers, the really good spokespeople, make sure to do that, and then they back the way into the facts and the details, the chronology, whatever the case may be. So, of course, there are many more reasons that leaders and organizations fail at crisis management, but these are 5 that I've seen all too often in my quarter century of doing this kind of work. So please leave your comments, your thoughts, your feedback on these 5 reasons. I would love to hear about it. You can also find me at richclientcrisis.com. Again, this wraps episode 77 of The Crisis Show, a special abbreviated edition, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.